I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
we welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact. Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. This is round number 9 of this season, coming to you today from Indianapolis. My name is Ron Maunz, and alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Josh Wilkie. And now, Josh, we've gone now to the final 5 races of this Formula Vee season. But kicking it off, we've got a very treacherous track. Yes, elevation change is slim to none around here, and yes, the only damage you could probably sustain when running off into the expansive grass runoff areas around this racetrack would probably be a swift kick in the shins from the IMS ground crews, but with a perilous turn 1 that seemingly invites big collisions, especially at the beginning of this race, and other parts of this track that are pretty similar in that regard, you've got a race that will be exciting for sure, but risky as well. So Josh, I don't know about you, but I feel like this track is going to be this season's Shark Tank. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with Indianapolis actually driving it, Ron, but I have actually done a few productions around here, and I can tell you with these cars, it's going to be a massive draft show today around those banked corners and onto the straightaways and so on. This is going to be perhaps our biggest momentum track of the season, I think. Keeping your momentum through here, especially through sections like we're watching right now, and getting that line correct and on the gas all the time. Getting those brakes just right and stuff is going to be the key to this race. That, of course, and as always in these things, and as we've seen in some of the other rounds we've done this season, Ron, that just decision making is huge. When you're going to make that, when you're going to make that move, when you're not going to make that move, are you going to put it up the inside? We've seen people get shuffled out by making one bad move. You can lose 4 or 5 positions. So should be a pretty interesting race today. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it, Ron.
Yeah, in reference to that discussion about one driver getting shuffled out and just careening their way down the running order, kind of saw that in terms of that lead pack fight at Zandvoort just 1 week ago here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Series. It was a very hectic race, but when everything was said and done, Jason Green, who you see in the camera shot right now, heading his way off into turn number 12 in this tail of the 3-car trio that we see right now, heading through the infield section before we go back onto the banking. And there's Jason Green nearly running off into the dirt, heading into the pits. He's currently 7th in this practice session that we're still in the midst of, but he won last time out at Zandvoort, and in the Spec 2 category, it was Brian Stasinski who was victorious in that class. He's currently placed 9th in this practice session. Not the highest Spec 2 driver, though, as Andrew Love has set the fastest practice time. I nearly said fastest qualifying time. That'd be jumping the gun a teeny tiny bit, but at 1 minute 47.677, that's a pretty good lap time for Love. So we'll see if he can try and convert that pace from this practice session into the qualifying session that we have coming up in the not-too-distant future. Still about 7 more minutes left to go from this practice session before we head into that 15-minute, 4-lap-long qualifying effort where these drivers are going to be trying to set the best lap times they can. But Josh, as you mentioned, a momentum-based track here, long flat-out blasts, especially in these Formula Vee race cars that start-finish straightaway. That is a fantastic overtaking opportunity. The game of leapfrog really going to be prevalent here. So as much as the qualifying has mattered at some other tracks that we visited throughout the season, with this track being so momentum-based, I have a feeling that qualifying may not have the same meaning as it has in races past.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ron. Because of all the drafting around here and stuff, like this straightaway here into T1 is so long for these cars that you could probably be in 10th place and draft up to first potentially. So it's going to definitely be down to one of those races where you really need to make sure that you are in the fight for the end of the race, meaning you want to be in position, you want to have a clean car, and you want to be mentally prepared to make that move late in the race and hopefully be able to hold it across the line. I am predicting we are probably going to see a very close finish here, probably all the way down the field. This is always kind of leads for really good finishes around here, as we can see the draft just working from Jordan Monty there on camera. We're going to have a lot of that today, and momentum is going to be huge around here, more than any track that we've visited so far for sure, Ron.
It's going to be a draft-heavy race. Momentum, very important. And heading into the final 5 races of this season, momentum going to be important in more ways than one. Of course, with the race out there on the track, it's going to matter. But in terms of the championship fight, that is going to play a huge role in deciding who may end up being our Spec 1 and Spec 2 champions here for Season 4 of 2024. We'll take a look at the Spec 1 standings, where Thor Tulo, a real-life Formula Vee driver who already has a handful of wins thus far this season, he is still in the championship lead, 627 points on the table right now. Jason Green slot in second at 556. Guido Marzucchi right behind in third, the Italian behind the wheel of the number 19 car. And really dicey with Green. We may see a fight between those two, especially if Green gets struck by a falling anvil, which it won't be the first time it's happened this season. He occasionally is the one that gets the short end of the stick in more ways than one, so we'll have to see if Green is going to hold on to that P2 position in the Spec 1 standings, or if he can actually challenge Tulo in the final 5 races. Anything can happen. However, that gap with Tulo is pretty significant. Jim Brewster and Stefan Heemskerk running at your top 5, with Heemskerk only 6 points behind Brewster. Heemskerk has been very impressive all throughout the season. Kicked the season off as a Spec 2 driver, moved on to Spec 1, but he has been incredibly impressive week in and week out. We'll have to wait and see how things will shake out for the final 5 races for the Dutchman. And we'll move on to the Spec 2 standings now, because this championship is looking mega close. Jason Grider leads it at the moment in the 552 car, 349 points on the board. It's only 13 points between he and David Fitzgerald, who's slotted in second. Andrew Love, who, just based off the pace that he's shown in this practice session, he may try and leapfrog up the running order in those Spec 2 standings, currently slotted in third. 331 points on the board, 5 behind Fitzgerald in second. Matthias Morin, the Canadian, behind the wheel of the 214 car. He's right behind Love, only 3 points separating those drivers. And then you have to go only 5 more points back to find Michael Lattarulo rounding out your top 5 at the moment. And also Parvinder Ladar in 6th, tied with Nick Tulo. And then you have to go just a couple of more points back to Brian Szynski and Wayne Buttermore, who are tied as well. And then you go back 3 more points to Travis Rail in 10th. This Spec 2 class is absolutely ridiculous. There's 45 points in it between Jason Grider in the championship lead and Travis Rail down in 10th. Josh, you're a Spec 2 driver in the other Weekend Warriors series. That is just a ridiculously close championship fight that we have here in the Formula Vees.
Yeah, it really is. It's always great to see that, right? I mean, it's kind of anybody's we only have a few rounds left in the season here, but there's definitely some room to strike there for a bunch of different drivers in S2. So it's always great to see that the field is pretty well matched, and that somebody's not just running away with it like some other people happening here in S2 that we won't mention today. But yeah, it's really good to see that, and it's really anybody's game in S2, so it's always fun to watch a race that's going to be tight like that. I think it's going to be kind of tight through the entire field, and we always do have to remember, of course, in these races that all the points count, whether you're in S2 or S1. That position counts. Those points count towards your championship at the end of the season, so it's always something to remember and keep in mind, Ron.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and aren't you proud of yourself there for that comment? I will leave it at that. But as you mentioned, only, well, I mean, including this, we got 5 races left to go, but after tonight, it's going to be 4. Lime Rock, Lebanon, Laguna Seca, and Okayamaga bring this season to a close here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, but Indianapolis is going to be a track that these drivers do not have any sort of reason to scoff at. It's one of the most historic motorsports facilities in the world. Opened all the way back in 1909. The first ever race it held was a hot air balloon race where the winner crash landed somewhere down in Alabama and skated away with the first ever checkered flag here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But ever since then, of course, it's played host to the Indy 500 every year, with the exceptions being 1917, 1918, 1942, 1943, 1944, 1945 for both world wars. But outside of that, it's hosted the Indy 500 every single May, except for 2020, where it was in August, but that's neither here nor there. I keep finding exceptions to the rule. My IndyCar history knowledge is coming back to bite me on the butt. But it's just a beautiful motorsports edifice. It is a wonderful facility, and it's the track layout that we're running is actually one of the newer ones here at Indy. The only layout which is actually younger is the dirt oval that you can find on the infield of turn number 3, used for the Brian Clausen Memorial Race every single summer. That's the BC 39, I believe, is the official name of that race. But this track, the layout that we're using today, fairly new. It's been used by IndyCar essentially yearly ever since 2014 with the inaugural Indy GP. But it's a track where we've seen a lot of odd things happen in the world of IndyCar. My mind harkens back to the first ever running of that Indy Grand Prix where Sebastian Saavedra, a driver who's been fairly forgotten in the world of IndyCar history, grabbed his one and only IndyCar pole, started from the pole position. Obviously, since he grabbed the pole in qualifying, you could tell the big brains on Brett here in this broadcast. But then, right as they were about to get rolling, because that season they tried to use standing starts for IndyCar, he stalled it and then got hit by about 5 or 6 cars. So that's how that went for the first ever running of the Indy GP all the way back in 2014. Now 10 years ever since the Indy cars made their first appearance at the Indianapolis Roval. Of course, a lot of history on the oval. The Roval, on the other hand, kind of, I would say it's like the redheaded stepchild of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Back when Formula 1 raced here from 2000 all the way up until 2007, when they last played host to the American Grand Prix at this track. We're running at roughly the same layout, with the exception mainly being the 5 and 6 chicane, which is used primarily by IndyCars and pretty much all the other series. However, you still got that configuration that F1 used way back in the day. But it's a track that a lot of people usually have a love-hate relationship for. Some people enjoy the simplicity around this racetrack. Others just absolutely despise it and think the track is absolutely featureless. You could compare it to Marmite, I would say, Josh.
Yeah, this is a track, again, like I said in the run-up, I don't really have a whole lot of experience around here. I have done a couple laps here, and there's something that just never jives with me with really, really flat tracks like this. But this one actually, for some reason, I was able to do it well, and it actually does feel kind of flowing. For some reason, somehow it doesn't feel as flat as it actually is, and I'm not really sure how it achieves that, but it doesn't. And I did actually have some pretty fun laps around here, so yeah, I'm going to have to agree with pretty much everything you said there, Ron. And, well, just for me, it's going to be a bit of a discovery today how this goes, because I really don't have a lot of experience in this new layout. Got some burning down here to do as well.
One driver that's doing some odd things at the moment is Kramer. They're Trent Kramer there in the now wrecked number 20 car. Not sure what in the world that strategy was, trying to do some donuts or something on the turn 2 of the oval. As Ken Poulin has a slide and a drift, has to stop it before he goes for a spin. That's heading through turn number 4, a very challenging corner around this lap. I'm curious, Josh, if you're right on board with Hank Mell in the 388 car, and I'll give a little bit of a track guide around this track. Historic in nature, but the layout we're running hasn't gotten a whole lot of use in the world of motorsports, at least in the grand scheme of the storied history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Crossing the yard of bricks now, heading down into turn number 1. This long straightaway going to be oh so important for these drivers trying to get a move done, but turn 1 is a real trouble spot. On lap 1, this is going to be the point of contention. You got that killer curb on the inside, braking hard, dropping the anchors, carrying a whole lot of speed through there to keep up the momentum. but if you go 3 or 4 wide through there, it could end in tears. You bottleneck through 2, now through turn number 3, but you're still turning by the time you have to dab on the brakes into turn number 4. That's a tricky corner. It kind of feels like it's off camber and on camber at the same time. Can't really describe it any other way than that. Then you got the kink, the chicane kink, whatever you want to call it, of 5 and 6. It's a corner where you just go through it and it doesn't really feel like anything unless you're driving a NASCAR Cup car here back in 2021. That is not an incident where you're going to have a big crash through there. Then on to this back straightaway, Holman Boulevard down into turn number 7. Missing the apex a little bit there. You got that killer curb on the inside. Very similar to turn 1, that corner. However, it is going to be another good overtaking opportunity, maybe even less risky than turn 1, shockingly enough. That was turn 8, 9, and 10 that we saw Mel go through a couple of moments ago. Fairly even section of the racetrack, another part of this road course which has been changed since the original configuration back in the year 2000. Now we're going through turn number 14, going back onto the oval, hard on the brakes now into turn number 12. That's a good overtaking opportunity, especially towards the end of this race. A final lap overtake into that corner is certainly not out of the realm of possibilities. You got that big curve on the inside of turn number 13, and then you got this big corner, the long, seemingly never-ending right-hander of turn number 14 to spit you back out onto that main straightaway here at this track. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway Roval is an odd ride in the world of motorsports, but it's got some unique twists and turns, unique flair to it as well. Some drivers love it, others absolutely hate it, but one driver is certainly loving it, is Andrew Love, as it stands currently 4 minutes into this qualifying session. He was on the pole. However, Jason Green, off the back of that victory 1 week ago at Zandvoort, jumps in front of him to grab that provisional pole, but the lap time's beginning to fall here, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we've got a few people squabbling for the first position here, and some great times out of Andrew Love as well. And I've raced Andrew Love for a couple seasons now in S2, and it just seems like sometimes he gets a track that he meshes with, and he's just unstoppable. So it looks like we might have another one of those days. He definitely seems to be jiving with this track, and it looks like at least at the top 3 or 4 here, we are going to have quite the race, although Jason Green pulling away by nearly 5/10 or just over 5/10 there. That is a great lap for Jason.
And, you know, looking back on hindsight with the track guide that I gave, right as I was saying that turn 5 and 6 is a somewhat inconsequential corner with not a whole lot of possibilities to have a major collision through there. Me calling the corner an incident instead of a section really proves that occasionally you can have some pretty bad things happening there. I remember hot lapping around this racetrack in the Dallara IRO1, the iRacing fictional open wheeler, like a V12 motor, 750 horsepower, whatever it produces. This just insane car in the world of iRacing, which I really think has gotten the short end of the stick in the world of iRacing ever since they released the Mercedes W11 Formula 1 car. It's the one, I believe, from 2021, but ever since then, the IRO1, not getting the use that I feel like it deserves, is a fantastic car. But it can be tricky heading through that chicane. I went through there once, and I think I managed to somehow flip it 5 times. So, I mean, that just may be me, because there's a very good reason why I'm behind a microphone instead of behind the wheel. Nevertheless, looking at some drivers who are very happy that they are behind the wheel. Andrew Love touching the grass through turn number 4, trying to shave any sort of distance off their lap time, which in these Formula V races can be oh so important. The momentum is big, but it's much like a go-kart with 4 wheels and a little bit more of an enclosed cockpit than a go-kart usually would. You want to try and shave a couple of inches and a couple of feet off your distance for your lap, because that'll end up costing you a whole lot of time if you just run a little bit wide through a corner. But looking at this, Stefan Heemskerk right now, you could see him crossing the line. Looked like he had a good middle sector, and he jumps up to second in front of Andrew Love at a 1:48.575. That's a pretty good lap time from Heemskerk. Let's see if he can improve to try and challenge Green.
Yeah, it looked like he had a really good final sector there, and that helped him get that time there. It looks like Andrew Love here not besting any of the sectors around that time, so I don't think this is going to be an improvement for him, but nonetheless, that is a very close lap time up to Heemskerk, as well as Colisio there is very close as well, and Jason Green just kind of setting some rarefied air there up in first place, so he's clearly found an extra gear or some sort of nice line there through one of these corners that's allowing him to go just a little faster there than everybody else today. This is all going to change, of course, once the draft happens, so that little 5/10 that he has during the race really isn't going to mean a whole lot because of these drafts. But it does mean that he has maybe a little bit better of a handle on the track, and that can reflect, obviously, by the end of the race.
Hey, confidence. That is a big thing when it comes to these races, having the confidence in the race car just to be able to chuck it around the corners like it's going out of style. So that may end up being something that helps add Jason Green come time for the 30 minutes that we have coming up in just a couple of minutes' time. About halfway through this qualifying session right now, however, these drivers are chugging away at the laps. That was a nice lap from Trent Kramer. Coming back to the pits after he repaired the damage on that race car. He's now out and rolling yet again, currently qualified 5th at 1 minute 48.883. So we'll see if he can possibly improve and maybe jump in front of Nate Colacio, who was incredibly impressive 1 week ago at Zandvoort. The driver who I believe was making his debut in this series from Illinois. He was very quick 1 week ago and looking to try and carry that pace here. Currently slotted in 4th in this qualifying session, about a half a second off the pole man of Jason Green. But a second row starting spot is nothing to scoff at all, as Heemskerk jumps in front of Andrew Love, so the game of leapfrog between those two continuing.
Yep, it looks like he just pipped him out just by a little bit here, and that's not really too surprising. They're just going to go blow for blow for blow here till the end, I would imagine, as they kind of get acclimated to the course. We know we have a bunch of drivers in here who are fast, and they learn quickly and stuff as well, so I think we're going to have a really, really close race here at the end of the day. Just the way this track's laid out, it's not really the hardest track in the world to drive around, although Jason Green is proving to us that it is difficult to master, obviously. One of those tracks again, so those tend to kind of provide crazy racing. When you have a bunch of confidence and the track isn't hard, you're kind of racing everybody else on the track, and I think that's what we're going to see today, honestly, is a lot of fighting back and forth.
Yeah, I think the scrapping that's going to go on between a lot of these drivers against each other is going to be monumental to follow in the race that we have coming up. And we'll have to see how these drivers can do. A really star-studded grid that we've had all throughout this season. Lots of staples of the Weekend Warriors world. Simon Mayer, a staple of the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. I've covered races in the past that he has won, and he's been running occasionally here in the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. I wouldn't say he's been running week after week, race after race. However, when he does show up, he is usually quite fast, I should say. Quite fast is the way that we would describe 1 week ago, where he was involved in that lead pack fight, but because of that breaking up a little bit towards the end of that race, didn't really have a shot to challenge Jason Green for the victory. Mayer at this point, though, running strong, currently qualified in 5th. Then he has Kramer right behind, and Thor Tulo, the championship leader, currently qualified in 7th. And we are talking about the fact he has a pretty big cushion in that championship lead in Spec 1. But he's been using that more and more. I feel like Tulo's pace has gotten a bit more inconsistent as this season has run by. The British driver certainly doesn't have experience running around this racetrack in real life compared to some of the other tracks that we have visited all throughout this season. But Tulo, for the second week in a row, struggling for pace, far less so than he did at Zandvoort 1 week ago. However, a P7 qualifying result is still not ideal for your dominant championship leader.
Yeah, it is a little bit odd to see Tulo down so low. I wonder sometimes if he's actually pulling a strategy with that, and he kind of wants to be not right up front in the front of the corner, because we do know he can race, and he's going to make his way up closer to the front most likely by the end of the race here if he doesn't get hit by a falling anvil, which I believe has happened once or twice in the last couple races here. Simon Mayer as well, like you were mentioning a little earlier, kind of my dark horse, honestly. He's always there, and when he shows up, races like this, and I think he's in, about 5th place or something now, 4th place now. So he's going to be definitely somebody to look out for today. He's a very good thinker in the car, let's say, and he's going to make good moves is what I've seen so far. And I believe he probably got caught by a couple falling anvils so far this season as well. So I'm expecting quite a bit out of him today. I would not be surprised if he's in the top 3 by the end.
A saying that I've been saying a lot as of late, mainly because I just thought of it a couple of weeks ago, is regardless of how those dents came out on your head, if you're actually, I just realized it's my own saying and I completely messed it up there, so well done to me. Now I'm trying to remember what the saying is, because I just completely messed it up in my own head. So we see Javier Rapules in the number 18 car set his way up into 12th. Yeah, it will eventually come to be. It may strike me in the head, much like the falling anvils do to some of these drivers. Trying to think of what the saying usually is. What is it with me, drawing a blank when it comes to phrases that I have coined myself on the air? I had this happen in a 4.5-hour long broadcast I was doing earlier when I completely forgot the word. pronunciation. It just blanked out of my memory, which is quite fitting. Of all the words to forget how to pronounce, pronunciation would, I guess, be the one that would be the most fitting. But the saying that the saying that I have been thinking of in my head, I've had to run through the dust bunnies and everything that is in my head. Most of my parts of my brain haven't really been tapped into for about 15 years. So I would say the saying is, it doesn't matter how that dent ended up in your head. If you're getting struck by the falling anvil, you're still going to have a headache in the morning. And that's what happens to a lot of these drivers. Small little incidents that happen in front of them where they just have nowhere to run or hide. You gotta get a small little piece of it. And I mean, even if it's a small little piece of it, you pick up some damage, you're done, you're in trouble. Chances of contending for a race win probably down to tubes. So these drivers, as much as they need to worry about their own race, they kind of need to worry about the others as well, just because we've had so many incidents thus far this season where a driver running all by them lonesome has a battle going on around them, nowhere to go once they come to blows, and they just get caught up in the crossfire, essentially. It's happened thus far this season. It may happen again in the final 5, but nevertheless, these drivers looking to try and set the best qualifying time they can to be up towards the front. Turn 1, though, that is going to be a big trouble spot for these drivers. I am dreading what it's going to be like seeing that field heading down into turn number 1. I say I'm dreading it. I'm not dreading it, more so I am dreading it on behalf of my vocal cords, and I will just leave it at that. There's Sam Chapman in the number 29 car that we're following right now. Chapman, the Aussie, has been a newcomer to this series, has only run in a couple of races. Actually, harkening back through my memory, I believe the first time that he ran in this series was at Summit Point a couple of weeks ago. But ever since he joined this series, the Aussie has been supremely quick, looking to try and continue that form here at Indy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think last weekend he was kind of class of the session there. I think pretty much he pretty much had the fastest lap time, I believe, and then I don't think he did super duper well in the race. I can't totally remember there, Ron, if he actually got caught with one of those falling anvils near the end. But really good point about the falling anvils as well, that it's going to happen to you in a season, right? It's going to happen to you in a race. Sometimes you're going to get caught up in somebody else's mistake. Really, a lot of racing out there, and a lot of motor racing or sim racing is avoidance, and avoidance is key. And having kind of a fog of war and staying out of trouble and stuff is how you win seasons, and how you recover when that does happen. And try not to mentally let it destroy you too much, and get back in the car and get fast again as well. So good point to bring up there, Ron, as well.
That's a very good point that you bring as well in terms of talking about the mind games when it comes to these Weekend Warriors races. Same goes with the Formula V's as it does the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Fords on Sunday. Being in the right frame of mind can be oh so important when it comes to deciding who's going to be victorious in these races and who's going to fall by the wayside. Let's see how these drivers try and tackle those mind games in this race we have coming up. And speaking of, you can see that provisional grid lining up on that back straightaway. Gonna get that starting grid load up for you right about now. Jason Green going to be driving the pole. Stefan Heemsker going to join him on the front row. Andrew Love, the Spec 2 driver, with a very impressive qualifying performance off the back of an impressive practice performance as well. Andrew Love is certainly on form in that 544 car. Expect to see him running up towards the front a lot throughout this upcoming race. Simon Mayer going to be starting this race in 5th. Nate Coliseo in 5th. Joined on the 3rd row is going to be Sam Chapman. Trent Kramer going to be starting in 7th. Thor Tulo, the championship leader, going to be starting this race in 8th. Guido Marzuki in 9th. Kurt Nunez going to round out your top 10 in the 918 car. Starting this race in 11th is going to be Series admin Jim Brewster. Javier Rapulas, who's actually taken a qualifying time for the first time in a couple of weeks, he's going to be starting in 12th. Michelle Lynn, the reigning Spec 2 champion here from the series, moves on to Spec 1 this season. She's currently going to be starting this race in 13th. Brian Szynski going to join her on that 7th row. Then we have Russell Telker, the Spec 2 driver, going to be starting this race in 15th. Jurg Mani in 16th. David Fitzgerald in P17. Mark Cohn in P18. Ken Poulin and Chris Satterley. There we go. Thank you very much, Josh. I looked at that name and completely blanked. Thank you very much for that. That's right there, folks. Quick lesson in broadcasting. That is why we have producers, and that's why you listen to them. Travis Rill going to be starting in 21st. Hank Mell starting in 22nd. Wayne Buttermore in 23rd. Gary Wolbald in 24th. And Nick Tulo going to round out your 25 car grid here for round number 9 of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Series. And it should be noted, as we're seeing this field get this pace lap underway, that today's broadcast of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors on Slow Motion Broadcasting is brought to you today by Will at Steel Valley Vapors. Visit www.steelvalleyvapors.com to learn more and use code DOITFORDALE to get 15% off at checkout. I'll tell you what, Will has got some fantastic taste supporting such an exciting and entertaining series and making these hopefully equally entertaining broadcasts possible. But Josh, about to get things up and rolling. Turn 1, as I mentioned, it's a corner that these drivers and I am going to be dreading. What are your thoughts in terms of how to tackle this first lap if you're one of these drivers?
Yeah, I think, going into T1 here is going to be a bit of a schmozzle, I think. So, honestly, like I was saying before, one of the keys to this race and keys to every race is avoidance. You want to make sure that you have a swivel on your head and that you're not getting caught up in somebody else's mistake or getting caught up in a big bunch of cars or something like that. You want to make sure that you're free and clear and you can get through that first lap, maybe even first and second lap here. I think we're going to be pretty tight during this entire race, Ron. So it's really going to be about good decision making, staying off everybody else and just getting those passes clean and making them clean and drafting. And obviously, as we said on the run up, momentum is key. And here we go, Ron.
Ready to get things up and rolling. The green flag's down. The drivers are on their way. We can immediately see Stefan Heemskerk slipping into the coattails of Jason Green, our pole man. You can see the field already going side by side, even 3 wide, a little bit farther towards the front. Heemskerk playing the smart roll to slip into the back of Jason Green. This is a smart call. Is it going to work for him? I don't think he'll have enough momentum to go for a move into turn number 1. Mayer wills. He slips into 3rd. That's a very good overtake from him at the very beginning of this race. Andrew Love slipping down into the 4th position. You can see the drivers battling a little bit farther towards the back. Looks like most of the field got through lap 1, turn 1 clean. I say lap 1, we're only a couple of corners in. Heading onto the back straightaway the first time by, it is Green leading Heemskerk, leading Mayer, Andrew Love rounding at your top 5, and Nate Colascio starting this race up towards the front. He is running in 5th as it stands at the moment. You can see most of the field making their way through the opening corners of this lap fairly scot-free. Heading down into turn number 7, though, there's a good overtaking opportunity for these drivers. You can see Trent Kramer try and go for a dive on Colascio, and he gets it done successfully. Brewster now battling hard with Guido Marzucchi. I can see Michelle Lynn side by side with Brian Szynski a little bit farther towards the back. Looked like we were about to see Andrew Love go for a move on Simon Mayer heading down into turn number 10, but most of these drivers remaining clean. Right as I say that, though, Szynski spinning off the circuit. That's a crash for Szynski heading down into turn number 10. Not sure who that may have been involved with that. I believe it was York Monty in the 125, and you can see them using the pit exit lane used by the IndyCars every May for the Indy 500. They're trying to use that just to rejoin this race without losing out on a boatload of time, but it's Green leading this race. Heemskerk in 2nd, Mayer 3rd, Kramer in 4th, and Andrew Love running at the top 5 as a leader in Spec 2. But looking at this fight involving Kramer and Mayer, we may see these two go side by side in the not too distant future. And when I say not too distant future, I mean right now. Green's still leading it, sets the fastest lap of the race. Duh, he's still leading the race, and there's only 1 lap on the board. What do you think, Smarty Pants? Heemskerk now trying to go for a move on Green side by side, heading down into turn number 1. Is Heemskerk going to get the move done? It looks like he will. Look at Kramer, though, slipping up into 3rd, getting a move done on Love and Mayer. Meanwhile, some side by side fighting involving Marzucchi and Nunez. There's Tulo spinning off the track. Thor Tulo, the championship leader, starting a little bit farther back than he had in mind, going for a spin coming out of turn number 1. That's going to be a big talking point in terms of that championship fight. The driver of the number 90 car facing backwards literally and figuratively.
What a bummer for Tulo. Again, a falling anvil for Tulo. So, my prediction of wanting to maybe start a little farther back, it looks like we're going 3 wide here right away on lap 1. And we're going to single file out here, hopefully right by the end, nice and clean. Yep, so unfortunately, Thor got caught out again. We'll go back and have a quick look and see what happened here, but it looks like he just got shuffled out, unfortunately, Ron. I did have some problems with SDK there, so sorry for being so quiet for so long. We had a bit of a technical issue, but it is fixed now.
Well, thankfully for you, I can run my math for hours at end, only to the detriment of you having to listen to me for an extended period of time, and that was contact with himself and Nate Colascio coming out of turn number 1 into turn 2. That's the sort of thing that happens in that section, Josh. The driver goes for a move down the inside, maybe hits the curb and bounces themselves into the side pod of the car alongside them. Either that happens, or we just saw what happened there involving Coliseo, who I believe has actually dropped back a teeny tiny bit, so may have been a little bit of damage on that race car caused by that incident. I'm actually going to look a little bit farther up towards the front now. Back to live action with Green and Kramer and Heemskerk 3 wide heading through the yard of bricks down that start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. Looks like they have kind of single filed out. I say that right as Andrew Love makes it 3 wide. Trying to go for the 3-for-1 deal heading into turn number 1. Andrew Love in that 544 car. Mightily impressive thus far in this race, and he gets that move done commanding fashion. Hang down into turn number 1. Guido Marzuki getting a move put on him by Russ Telker. So that's the 2 drivers battling right towards the tail end of the top 10. You can see Sam Chapman, who now holds the fastest lap in the race at a 148.7, now involved in the midst of that fight as well. But these drivers seeing this race continue to develop. The field is still vacuum sealed together, which could be part of the reason why they're continuing to fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Just saw Michelle Lynn there go for a nice little dive up the inside. I think she almost got it done here with Guido, so nice and close. We're definitely rooting for Michelle here to get a race clean and not get struck by an anvil that we continue to mention here this race. But we are going 3 wide here. Let's see if we can't make this one work. And it looks like we're all clean into there. Very nice driving from the Chiquita car as well there to hold back just a little bit on Guido. So we're looking pretty good here. Michelle is looking good at the moment. And the front looks like we're kind of gapping out a bit here. Andrew Love is flying today, Ron. This is pretty darn impressive, man.
Yeah, Andrew Love showing a whole lot of pace in this race. Set the fastest time in practice. Qualified 3rd overall as a Spec 2 driver. But Andrew Love has a fantastic opportunity to do something that we haven't seen too much of thus far this season. And that would be a Spec 2 driver winning it overall. I can't even remember the last time we had that happen. May have been Trent. Actually, I can't even count Trent Kramer. He was considered by us at the time to be a Spec 2 driver, but he was actually racing for a Spec 1 position, so can't even count that. I guess we'd have to go back to Chris Montgomery for the end of last season to find a Spec 2 driver winning a race overall. So Andrew Love would certainly be putting his name in a very elite category, as we're seeing fastest laps up and down the grid. Tulo running at 15th at this point in time has now grabbed the fastest lap of the race, so well done for him. However, he's still on the back foot massively and finds himself in the midst of a hornet's nest heading down into turn number 1. Tulo in the midst of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 car, 6 car fight. What in the world? Tulo battling as hard as he can. He's lost at 6 spots thus far, trying to battle, scrape, and claw for every sort of position that he can, which is really what he needs to do in terms of the championship fight, as I think he may have just gotten another move done on Ken Poulin to slip his way up into 13th. The battling already very intense into this race. And I gotta say, a car right in front of them is Nate Coliseo, who's lost out on a tremendous amount of time over the past few moments as Michelle Lynn and Mark Cohn go side by side, heading down into turn number 7. Looks like Michelle going to get that move done to slip her way up into P10. But Josh, that was a pretty rough start from Nate Coliseo. I think it had to have been that contact with himself and Tulo that sent him back.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. We know he's got a bunch of pace, and Thor as well, and it looks like they're just side by side again here. So I think they're going to make their way up the field a little bit here with Michelle Lynn, hopefully dragging them through the air here a little bit into the next pack, and we'll see if they can't catch up. But it is really unfortunate that Tulo just keeps getting caught in little mistakes there. Perhaps next week, he's just going to have to try to get that qualifying position a little closer to the front here so he can be in this pack for the fight, because we know he has the speed, as Andrew Love and Trenton Kramer and Jason Green are going 3 wide into T1.
Oh, here we go. Heemskerk making it 4 wide. Stefan Heemskerk, the Dutchman, trying to impress. He's now 3 wide, trying to grab the lead from Kramer. There's still 3 wide through the braking zone of turn number 1. Heemskerk on that inside line. Kramer in the middle. Green going to inherit the inside line off through turn number 2. They single file out. Andrew Love getting shuffled out a little bit as Mayer gets a move done on him to shuffle back Love to 5th. But looking at that 4 wide, Heemskerk, what in the world? What possessed him to go for the move? 4 wide heading down the start-finish straightaway. It can be done here in these Formula V's. They are basically a small little fly in the racing world, so in terms of size, they could probably fit them like 9 wide heading down the start-finish straightaway here at Indy, heading into turn number 1. But even though it can be done, Scientists asked if it could be done. They didn't figure out whether or not it should be done. Heemskerk definitely wanted it to be done, tried to get that move done. Didn't really work out too well for him. He only got one move done when everything was said and done in terms of that little argy-bargy 4-wide action heading down into turn number 1 and 2 at the beginning of this lap. But Heemskerk trying to impress as we see Mel Slow and I think Satterley involved in that incident as well.
Yeah, we'll come back and have a quick look at this here, and then we'll touch on that 3-wide again. It looks like
Satterley
we just got some braking. Yeah, the blinking is never going to help out. Hopefully that wasn't a part of it here, but I suspect perhaps it was. Yeah, there we are. So he literally blinked into existence in front of Hank there. Nothing he could do. It's just part of sim racing, unfortunately, and something we have to deal with. So that's really too bad.
I mean, that sort of stuff can tend to happen, but it still absolutely hurts whenever it happens to you. It's something where you kind of laugh when it happens to somebody else, but whenever it happens to you, you are silently hissing like an irate cat. But nevertheless,
good point. Yep.
Tough to have that happen, especially so early on into this race. I say so early on, we are 9.5 minutes into this 30-minute long race, so quickly approaching the end of the first third. And it's been a first third of this race, incredibly action-packed. Kramer leading it over Green, holding on to P2 at the moment as Stefan Heemskerk tried to fight him off, heading through the first few corners at the beginning of this lap. Chapman now involved in this fight as well. Andrew Love getting shuffled a little bit farther in the back. It's now Love in 6th and Telker about 2.5 seconds back in 7th, so that may be a fight on our hands for the Spec 2 win. But Chapman trying to get a move done on Mayer, heading off into turn number 7. He clears him, slips into the draft of Heemskerk, and tries to go for another game of leapfrog, and Chapman, the Aussie, gets it done successfully. Oi, oi, oi to the driver of the 29 car. Oh, and Michelle Lynn going off the track. Tortulo as well.
Thor and Michelle off the track. Yeah, right after we saw a great move there from Sam Chapman. That was an absolutely great move. You can see that draft working in live pictures there for you guys as well, just how strong it really is and keeping that momentum flying into the corner. But unfortunately, it looks like Michelle Lynn's been caught out once again here. So let's have a look and see what happened. We are going too wide here. We got Thor in front. It looks like maybe we're just going to have a bit of a misjudgment here. Unfortunately, yeah, that a little bit odd there, Ron. What do you think about that one? That looked a little early for Thor, maybe? I'm not really sure.
I'm curious, Josh, you could possibly load up a replay in the not-too-distant future. Once this action cools off up towards the front, though, Chapman trying to get the move done on Green. So, oi, 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 again to the driver of the number 29 car. He has been fighting at this point, trying to get that done on Green. He gets it done successfully, heading down the start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. Green and Kramer now battling hard. And look at Stefan Heemskerk trying to stick his nose in that fight. Heemskerk, the Dutchman, has been incredibly exciting to follow throughout this season. Ever since he was running in Spec 2 earlier on this year, he was brilliant to watch then. Now as a Spec 1 driver, he is equally brilliant, if not even more exciting to follow as well, because he's battling for the overall win in these races, not just the win in class. Heemskerk has been incredibly impressive, but in terms of that action that he brings to all of these races, has really converted into results. He is yet to grab a victory overall thus far this season. Heemskerk, I feel like, is gagging for one, though, because he has been fast. He's been quick all throughout this season, and with 5 races left on the board, just based off the pace he showed and the law of averages, I feel like he has to get into victory lane somehow. Maybe today may be the day.
Yeah, you're definitely right, Ron. That's a really good point. Heemskerk's always been there all season. I think maybe he took 1 win this season, might even be in the first round, and he just kind of keeps getting caught up in stuff and everything, right? He's always had the pace, just always seems to be in the schmozzle with everybody else here. So it looks like today he's really kind of biding his time back there. He's having a good look at everything with Simon and Andrew as well there. You can see, like I was saying before, the dark horses, or at least my 2 dark horse picks, are definitely Andrew and Simon Mayer, who you can see as we were going 3 wide and 4 wide and stuff, they were the first ones to kind of duck out and be like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to play that game quite yet. That can hurt you, but it can also help you win the race at the end, or at least be there to win the race, as we look like we're going. Jason's going to make it 3 wide one more time into T1. I'm starting to like this.
Oh, here we go. Look at Heemskerk maybe gonna get involved in that fight as well. Offset, off-kiltered, looked like the start of a motorcycle race instead of a Formula Vee race 13 minutes in. Looking at that, though, from Kramer, cutting down to the inside line, wheeling that race car like it's going out of style. Trent Kramer looking to impress and looking to grab that lead from Green. Not going to be successful at the beginning of the 8th lap of this race. Look at Heemskerk slotted into P2. The fight evens out between Chapman and Love, so those two drivers running in 4th and 5th as it stands at the moment. Mayer, though, maybe going to get involved in this fight as Love tries to go side by side yet again with Chapman and backs out of it. Side by side, though, is the name of the game between Kramer and Green. Looks like Kramer is going to withstand the challenge heading down into turn number 7. That's a good overtaking opportunity. We outlined it there, but it's an opportunity to run off the track, and this may be the shot that Green needs to retake the lead of this race. Battling through 8 and 9 side by side, they single file out off through 10. But that's the thing with turn number 7, it bottlenecks. That's the thing with turn number 1. It kind of makes those corners very similar in my book, the fact that the racetrack bottles up as much as it does. But speaking of bottling up, these drivers, much like a bottle of soda that's been thrown down a flight of stairs, this fight is really starting to fizz as Kramer drops down to 3rd.
Yep, it's definitely fizzing up. That's a good way to put it, for sure. It's somebody shook the bottle and it's about to pop here, definitely, or we're getting close anyway. To be honest, it's almost been every lap here. It looks like they want to lead up front there. It's a little bit strange, but they actually seem to want to lead, and they're not really losing a lot of time by the looks of it. They are kind of bringing that other pack into it, and they are going to have to start thinking about that pretty soon here, going 3 wide into T1 every single lap. There's going to be a big group of cars actually at the end of this, I think, Ron. They're slowly bringing even Jim Brewster and that other pack into this with this double wide into T1 every single lap here. But they're doing a really good job of single filing out. We've got Andrew Love here in the back just kind of looking around, making sure he makes good moves. You can see he's kind of going a little wider and cutting back in. Still looking at Andrew and Simon here for a potential win at the end of this, and I think that's what they're looking for. They're hunting back there.
I think these drivers are, I like the phrase that you used there. They do feel like hunters. They're trying to get every single opportunity that they can to try and throw an arrow towards their competitors' ways. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you have a total miss, and sometimes you hit that bullseye. But looking at these drivers battling hard, Mayer backing out of it. I think you brought this up earlier on in this broadcast, Josh, in reference to the drivers that Andrew Love and Simon Mayer are. Mayer is such a patient driver. I really don't know what it is with him. I feel like he's just driving around this Formula Vee race car as if it's a Sunday cruise more than anything else. Well, Saturday cruise, considering it is Saturday instead of Sunday. The Super Sunday in action here on SMB. Gonna be in spades tomorrow, but more on that towards the end of this broadcast. But Mayer, he just treats this like he's cruising around the racetrack. He has never really got caught up in the red mist of these races, which can get very hectic at times. So I really applaud Mayer, the fact he has that skill and patience. It's zen-like patience from the driver of the number 5 car to just be able to shut off all of the noise around him, stay on track, and occasionally just grab a victory as all the others crumble around him.
Yep, totally. It looks like this might be our first time into T1 that we're not going 3 or 4 wide here. So we're just going to, stick with Jim Brewster and Russell Telker here, who's actually running 2nd place right now in S2, doing really, really well here as well. We've had him kind of misclassed in the last couple races. Russell Telker is an S2 driver, punching really nice above his weight here up in 8th place, and with a really cool pick there, by the way, down on his by his name as well there with the tactical shot. I'm loving it. And it looks like just behind him he's got Curtin Nunez, who is definitely hounding him. These guys have been in a pack pretty much since the beginning with these other guys in the front as well, so I would imagine that they're hoping that these guys in the front just keep squabbling with each other and it can bring them up into the fight, Ron.
And that's the thing with these races. You can occasionally see a little bit of teamwork making the dream work and just making a fight even more insane. Heemskerk, that was an aggressive move to jump in front of Green. Heemskerk, going back to the point that I mentioned earlier on in reference to him being, he's a very quick driver. I mean, you can tell just based off the times that he's led this race, the times that he's set all throughout, and him contending for race wins week after week. But I feel like it's his aggression that really kind of comes back to bite him on the butt come time for these races. Kramer just went for a move into the dirt on Chapman. So, speaking of aggression, that was a beautiful segue there. Thank you very much, Josh, for that. Kramer feeling so racy, stealing the show from Heemskerk, who I was just going to say he's a very fast driver, but he can get a little bit aggressive at times. And right as I say that, Kramer goes for a move on the dirt. Gets it done successfully, though, to slip his way up into the final podium position. Coming to 12 minutes left in this 30-minute long race. It has been a hard-fought fight for all of the drivers at the north end of this field. Josh, this may seem like a little bit of a loaded question, considering this pack can absolutely blow apart if one driver hits a curb a little bit south. But I'll have to ask you in a couple of moments' time who you think may prevail in this. Looking at it, nearly 4 wide heading down into turn number 1. And look at that, and they come to blows. Chapman goes up into lower Earth orbit. Green involved in that as well. I think there may have been another driver that got a piece of that incident, albeit a minor one. Right as I was going to say and ask you who you think is going to prevail in this fight, I had to stop myself being like, hey, with how hard they're battling, something's going to pop. You know, we talked about this battle being like a bottle of soda that someone just chucked down a flight of stairs. Who's going to be the one that opens up that bottle first and gets that soda spilled onto their shirt? Looks like it may have been Chapman. Here is the replay. That was just some messy stuff. You can say both of them really contributed to that. Green trying to stay wide with Kramer on his inside, and then you had the very aggressive move from Chapman trying to sweep around it. Looks like Green is going to be pulling over to the side of the road. Probably. He is done. That car is wrecked.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right there, Ron. I'm not really sure that Sam knew, or at least, put together that Jason had a car up his inside. He's doing his very, very best not to hit that car up the inside, and Chapman just came down really aggressively and made contact there. So pretty unfortunate, but I'll tell you what, it makes that question you asked me 2 cars easier here now. So, I'm still going to put I'm going to put some weight on Andrew Love here from my pick. I really want to see him take a win. He had the fastest time for so long today. He's really, really been driving a good race here just to stay out of trouble and everything else. So I'm gonna put it on Love today. I'd like to see Love take a win.
I mean, just in terms of pace, he certainly deserves it. And in terms of aggression, he's been keeping his car clean. And considering what happened 1 lap ago, that can make all the difference in these races. Heemskerk leading at Kramer in P2. Those drivers going side by side, though. Kramer trying to sweep around the outside and turn that into the inside line off into turn number 2. Is Kramer going to get that move done? Heemskerk going to try and sweep around the outside. Love nearly making a 3 wide on corner exit. It looks like Heemskerk going to hold on to the lead at the moment, giving a smoke screen to the front of Kramer. This is, I think, honestly, as much as that collision has taken at 2 drivers who very much earned their spot in that battle and really deserves a shot at taking a victory here today, that creates even more intrigue around this fight. Because you've got Andrew Love, the Spec 2 driver, running in 3rd at the moment. That would be an impressive result for a Spec 2 driver to take an overall win. You've got Mayer as well as Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warrior stalwart, who has run in this Formula Vee series in the past but has yet to grab a victory. He may be able to do it here today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway by just playing the patient game. But the front 2, Trent Kramer and Stefan Heemskerk, definitely very aggressive racers. And we've seen from Heemskerk all throughout the season. We saw with Kramer making that incredibly opportunistic move, running off into the dirt through turn number 11 not terribly long ago. Those 2 battling hard. I have a feeling that we may get a case of deja vu. After that incident with Green and Chapman, we may see something very similar happen between now and the end of this race, which is still coming up in 8.5 minutes time. So, whole lot left to be played for at this point in time. And all 4 of those drivers running at the front of the field, really, they both have a good shot to do it, have a good chance to do it, and I feel like they've all earned their chance at grabbing a victory.
Yeah, definitely. It's really anybody's race up there at the front for sure. They all have the pace. They've all sort of put in the time and the work here, and as long as we can keep going a couple more times into T1 here, 3 and 4 wide, and we can make it to the end, one of these guys is going to take it. I'm looking, at the moment, Heemskerk's looking really, really strong, but honestly, the draft around here, I really don't think you want to be in first place coming around the last lap there. The guy in 4th probably has a better chance at first coming down that back straight, so we'll have to see how that plays out in the end. It does look like now they have kind of sped up overall lap time here as well, so they're not really bringing Jim and Kurt and Russell into the fight so much anymore. We've got Khalil there behind them as well, who's probably going to be up in this fight with Russell here pretty soon, but we have definitely kind of packed out into different packs of drivers here. Thor trying to make his way back up through as well after some falling anvils on him too. We got Jorg Mani back here kind of out by himself as well, so looking pretty good so far, and it looks like we got a bit of a fight here between Thor and Con.
Yeah, looking at that, Mark Kahn with a little bit of a curb whack heading through turn number 7. Too low at this point in time. As much as he wants to get a better position, he finds himself in a very good spot. Despite the fact he had that incident earlier on, he's just barely running inside the top 10. That incident with Green is going to help him a lot in terms of that championship fight. It looked like it was going to be a swing in momentum the other direction, but turns out it's going to be the complete opposite way around. Tulo trying to get a move done around the outside into turn number 12. Not close enough to get that move done on Khan to slip his way up into 9th. But that's a really cool fight that we're going to continue to follow. Running a little bit wide is Khan. Having the momentum is Tulo. He's not going to enjoy the draft, though. He may get hung out to dry as we see him. He may get railroaded by all the drivers around him. Let's see. Tulo enters this straightaway in 10th. Let's see where he ends it. There's Marzuki going for the move on him. Looking right behind. Pula may try and make it 4 wide with these drivers running just barely inside the top 10. Marzuki slipping his way up into 9th. Khan in 10th. Tulo in 11th. Looks like Ken Pula not going to risk it to go 4 wide on the outside heading into turn number 1. However, one driver who's feeling really, really risky is Khan. That was a big curb whack. I'm curious, Josh, you could maybe right on board with Khan running in the 11th spot at the moment, heading into turn number 7 in just a couple of moments' time. He has been hitting those curves like it's going out of style. I'm curious how he hasn't picked up some sort of slowdown or like corner cutting penalty, because that was a pretty egregious run through turn number 1. He had all 4 wheels off the deck a couple of moments ago, so Khan certainly feeling very aggressive when it comes to hitting those curves. You need to treat them with respect. It's like the bumps at Sebring, but at the same time, you give them the wrong look, they will shoot you off the track. Here's Khan, though. It looks like he's actually going to stay fairly calm in reference to the curves as he tries to get a move done on Guido Marzuki off through turn number 8 and 9. So right as I was going to say that Khan was taking a very aggressive line on those curves, wants to play me like a fiddle as we nearly see them coming to blows heading through turn number 10.
Yeah, iRacing is one of those things where you actually can, there's a bit of leeway there. You're not going to get a time penalty necessarily if you know exactly how to cut it and not get the time penalty. You can take a 1X and keep going and maybe actually gain a bit of an advantage from it. But as we look here, Andrew Love is taking the lead of the race. I don't think that's going to stick down the front straight here, and he got it done down the front straight last time. We'll see if we can't get a quick replay of that shortly after this here. But we're just mentioning in our chat here as well that Love last night in the draft party had the fastest time all night, so it looks like he kind of set the bar for everybody who came to beat him today. And we did get a couple people who had some faster laps, but he is still in the fight, and that's all that matters. So he's got a fast lap time, maybe the fastest one out there at the moment, and he's up in 2nd place. So I think my prediction's looking pretty good, Ron.
Yeah, I would have to say so. Mayer trying to get a move done on Love heading through turn number 4. They're going to continue to be side by side. Love certainly setting the pace. Is he the trendsetter or is he the pace setter, though, is the real question. I would say he's more of a pace setter, considering the time that he showed in the Friday night draft party that all these Formula Vee Weekend Warriors drivers have on Friday nights before these races. Set the pace there, set the pace in practice, qualified 3rd overall and top of the Spec 2 drivers. So I think Love is going to be a driver that we really need to keep our eyes on. Gotta take a look at a replay, though, of a moment earlier on in this race. Let's see what happened here, Josh.
Yeah, so this is how Love got the lead of the race there a couple laps ago. Pretty easy draft right down to the front. He just kind of moved over and let him have it. So that's kind of what we're going to see till the end here, of course, until we go totally nuts at the end and try to dash for the line. But that was a pretty easy pass for Love up to the front, and we're looking pretty good here.
Well, he's still running up towards the front, not exactly at the front, as Kramer is leading this race. Now with less than 3 minutes left to go here for round number 9 of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. I have a feeling, though, Josh, it may be turning into more of a 2-and-2 show rather than 4 cars battling for the victory. Kramer and Love running P1 and P2 have about 0.6 of a second between themselves and Stefan Heemskerk in 3rd, so I'm curious as to whether or not Heemskerk, the Dutchman, will get snubbed of another victory or whether he will come back back with a vengeance in the final 2 laps of this race. 2 to go, 2 by 2, heading down into turn number 1. Kramer on that outside, Love on the inside, Mayer and Heemskerk side by side right behind them as well. Looking at this, how is it going to shake out through turn number 2? It's so easy to have a disaster befall you when you're battling hard through the first few corners of this lap. But it looks like Love is going to capitalize and get that move done. Kramer, meanwhile, starting to feel some pressure from Heemskerk. They're side by side through turn number 4, heading through the chicane for the second to last time in this race. This is advantage Love, but as you mentioned a couple of moments ago, Josh, it is so easy to lose the lead in these Weekend Warriors races. I feel like Love is not going to fight this challenge with Kramer. You said it, and it's not even hyperbole. Probably have a better shot to win this race if you start that final lap in 4th than if you do in 1st. So Love trying to hold on to that lead for now. However, this may be a detriment rather than an assistance his way. He fights hard with Kramer. Kramer now going to have to deal with some pressure from Heemskerk. However, Love is going to be in the lead, coming out of turn number 10 for the second to last time in this race. However, the real question is, he may be the one taking the white flag. Is he going to be the one taking the checkered flag? That is the main thing that remains to be determined. I think that flat-out place between turns 10 and 12, it is long enough where you can get a run, but not long enough whereby you can go for a move. So that may be a section where it'll have to be a dive from one of those drivers to take the lead in this race. And when you have a dive bomb, it can end in tears. Looking at a fight involving Brewster, we'll come up with a new nickname for him, Nate Cleo Coliseo in the 6th position at the moment. Kurt Nunez in 7th, Russ Telker currently running out that 4-car fight. But this is a 4-car fight that we have our attention on. One more lap to go here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. Kramer, Heemskerk, Love 3 wide. Are they going to be 4 wide heading down into turn number 1? Certainly covered by barely any air. Love getting shuffled back down to 4th. That's exactly what you warned us about, Josh. But looking at this, Kramer, Heemskerk side by side through turn number 2. It's going to be Heemskerk having the momentum on the outside line, or is Kramer going to get it done? They're still going to be side by side heading down into turn number 4. Down to the brakes, down the gear. Love going to try and maximize his run coming out of turn number 4. You're flat out from there, all the way through into the braking zone of 7. He may be able to get this done. Heemskerk sideways. Heemskerk loses it. Heemskerk goes off the track. He made contact with Mayer. Stefan Heemskerk going to ruin his race in the span of a couple of seconds. That's going to careen his way down the running order. He's now running all the way down in 8th. A disaster for the Dutchman. But looking at these two at the front, it is really a 2-car fight. There's a little bit of damage on Mayer's race car, so that's going to be game, set, match for him. Looking at a fight involving Cleo Coliseo and Jim Brewster. Now Kurt Nunez trying to get a move done on Nate through turn number 8 and 9. Looks like they're going to single file out for the moment. But Kramer and Love, that is going to be the fight that I have my eyes on. Will Simon Mayer also fall back into the crutches of this fight? That remains to be determined. But Kramer and Love, they were the ones that prevailed in that chaos heading through the 5 and 6 chicane. I don't know. I just did not have a good feeling about the sideways nature of Heemskerk. Took a bad line through there. It ends in tears. Kramer, though, took a very shallow line coming through turn number 13. He may begin a slow down penalty. That looked like a borderline corner cut, but nevertheless, Love going to be enjoying the draft, trying to get a run, pulling out. They're going to be side by side, coming right to the yard of bricks. Will it be Kramer or will it be Love? It is going to be Trenton Kramer winning it.
Gets it.
0.013 of a second after over 30 minutes of racing action. Trent Kramer, though, wins it. If he was like a half a mile an hour slower coming out of that final real corner of turn number 13, that would have been absolutely ridiculous. Speaking of ridiculous, look at that, with Guido Marzucchi locked steady in a very close fight with himself, Khan in P11 and Wohlbolt in 13th. Man, wow. Josh, we are expecting that race to be hectic. We certainly got that and then some, but holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think right at the end there, if Andrew Love had not yanked the wheel to the left and went so violently towards the wall and actually kind of made the track longer for himself there, he may have actually got the win on that one if he would have just stayed straight and kept going. He lost out by a tiny little bit. Of course, we'll never know for sure, but man, that was such a great race from Love, and really, really too bad to lose Heemskerk right at the end there. Let's go back and have a quick look and see what happened here.
Now let's have a look-see. Heading through turn number 4 side by side is Kramer and Heemskerk. Heemskerk on that outside line, tried to hold it, hit that curb, and it was just game, set, match from there. Andrew Love, I think, needs to go and buy a lottery ticket considering how close he came to to getting pile driven by Stefan Heemskerk's spinning 96 car. Gonna be following Love's perspective of this. This was beautiful camera work on that final lap. Thank you very much, Josh, for that angle as it happened in live action. Heemskerk just loses it over that curb. Mayer gets bopped up into the air. Love, I think he could not replicate that close call if he tried it a million times. That was just so close to being a 3-car accident and near airplane accident in the process. That was some pretty wild stuff towards the end of this race, but this man, Trent Kramer, in the number 20 car is going to be victorious after over 30 minutes of racing action. It was certainly tight, though. I gotta say, Love, despite the fact he wins it in the Spec 2 category, quite comfortably so as well, and considering the absence of Jason Grider, he will probably inherit the championship lead in the Spec 2 category as a result of that brilliant try for him. That is still a bit of a sting, I gotta say, but I mean, hey, that's just my perspective in the commentary booth. I'm sure Love is possibly just ecstatic about how things went for him in this race because he gave it his all. All of those drivers gave it their everything. Sometimes pushed a little bit over the limit, but hey, they're racers. They're going to push it to the extremes, and sometimes you may go a little bit overboard. Speaking of going overboard, who's going to go over? Who just got T-boned? Michelle Lynn certainly got hit. This is the annual, every single week, the weekly crash 'em up and wreck 'em up demo derby at the end of these Formula Vee Weekend Warriors races. These drivers always like to put on a good show. Russell Telker in the 260 car. Oh my God, that's Heemskerk. That car is absolutely destroyed.
Good look at the front suspension there.
His front nose cone is still there, but everything else is missing, so that is absolutely bizarre. And I think they may have just gone yoinked back out. Actually, no, they're still out there on the racetrack, giving us a very odd spectacle with that. Who I believe that was Jorg Monty, just got popped up into into the air a little bit. Some skateboard tricks going on. Michelle Lynn, I believe, is probably upside down. Oh, hang on, let me. Okay, I was worried, Josh, that your iRacing just crashed on you there for a second.
You know what? I think it actually just did. It actually just did crash on me. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to load that back up again. I think all of those shenanigans right there actually just broke the game on me. So let's see if we can't get that loaded back up, and then we'll get some points going for you here. But what an absolutely amazing race right until the end there, Ron. Holy cow.
Incredible racing. Absolutely brilliant from start to finish. And give me 1 second here real quick because I have a very bad idea. I need to take a quick sip of water. I'm curious as to whether or not after like 6 hours on the air and being awake for the past 13 hours is going to allow me to actually do this, but considering the screen that we have on this broadcast as we get these technical issues sorted out, I will see this as my one and only opportunity to ever do something like this. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, and that's a very good reason why I'm usually on a broadcast instead of singing. That's a very good reason why I could not make it in any sort of career as a musician.
I see Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and Degassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.